So for the April 2020 Throwback Day, we're going to be talking about a movie that's been on my radar for quite some time. And it is definitely, even to this day, one of the more relevant films in the history of the industry. And that, of course, is the 1947 Best Picture Oscar winner, Gentleman's Agreement, starring the legendary Gregory Peck, Dorothy McGuire, John Garfield, Celeste Holm, and a very young Dean Stockwell. So this movie, the reason why it has been in my mind for quite some time is because it's a movie that my mother has been telling me to see for a while. And it's also an important one for myself and my family and my heritage because it actually revolves around the topic of anti-Semitism. And the movie is about a young journalist named Schuyler Green who has moved from California back to New York with his son in order to take care of his ailing mother. But at the same time, he's also looking for work. And things start to go in a very interesting direction when a head of a newspaper is trying to put together a story about anti-Semitism within America in a time when things were starting to get out of World War II and starting to be prosperous. This man still believes that not everybody has the same opportunities only because of the fact that they are different in regards to their faith. Now, what's so interesting, at least to me, in regards to Gentleman's Agreement, is the year that this movie came out. Considering the fact that this movie was released 2 years after the end of World War II, which of course also involved the liberation of survivors from the concentration camps in the Nazi-occupied Europe territories, but at the same time, this movie comes out only 1 year before the State of Israel is established. So, as a Jewish person, this is definitely an integral piece of my own people's history. And at the same time, it reminded me a great deal of another very good movie that is one of my personal favorites. I've even reviewed it in my fandom feature, and that is the 1993 film School Ties, starring Brendan Fraser and a monstrous cast of great, well-known names now who were unknown at the time, along with Brendan Fraser. I highly recommend this film. So there was definitely a great deal of similarities when I understood the plot of this story, but it definitely is a little bit different because Schuyler Green, when he gets this job, he tries to figure out how he's going to really bring this story to light. And he feels that the only way for himself to do this is to pretend that he is a Jewish person himself. So he takes his real name, because Schuyler's just his nickname, so he goes by the name of Phil, but instead of Phil Green, he calls himself Phil Greenberg. And it's also an interesting time because when he gets to New York and he gets this job, he meets a young woman who he truly falls in love with, who is a Christian like himself, but when he starts to tell people about what he's trying to accomplish and how he's supposed to be addressed as he's going to pretend that he's Jewish for 6 months, he sees the roots and the underlying feelings of anti-Semitism in America really come out full force. And it really makes him upset because of the fact that these people he knows, like doctors and people who run restaurants and people even that he's become very fond of in recent times, he knows that deep down inside they're truly good people. But when he starts doing this story and he starts seeing these inklings of anti-Semitism and bigotry, he suddenly realizes that this is not as something that you should just sweep under the rug just because you're a good person and you may have these slight, unintentional, or possibly intentional feelings towards other people that are not like yourself. It really raises the question as to who really is a good person. And throughout the film, even though Schuyler knows that he is not a Jewish person, he sort of feels at the end that he is a Jewish person, and he understands the plight of the Jewish people in these times of prosperity. Even when he has a good friend of his from his childhood who is a Jew, and he seems to just wipe these things off of his shoulder because he's dealt with this for so many years of his life, but Schuyler really sees it differently. And even the woman who he falls in love with will not go to bat for himself when he's pretending that he's a Jew, or even Skylar's Jewish friend, just because of the fact that she comes from a wealthy Christian white upbringing in very wealthy neighborhoods in suburban Connecticut. She won't even understand the true errors of their ways, and she won't defend people like Skylar, even though he is not truly Jewish, but she understands what he's trying to accomplish, and it really does cause some tensions. Probably one of the most hard-hitting moments is when Skylar's son, who is played by Dean Stockwell, and you probably heard that name many times because he's one of the most prominent character actors in television and film, he's just a little boy in this movie, and when he comes home crying one day saying that people in his class called him a dirty Jew, even though he knows it's not true because he's not Jewish, Skylar just sees his entire world turn upside down, and as a person, he truly changes, even after he publishes the article, and it sends waves of understanding and awareness across the world of journalism. He still feels that nothing is ever going to be the same, even though he no longer has to go under this disguise. I definitely feel that this is a very important film to see. It's definitely very relevant, and I personally myself can sympathize in regards to these kinds of things, because when I go out in public, I don't necessarily tell people that I am in fact a member of the Jewish faith. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of people that when I do tell them I'm Jewish, they can't even believe it because I don't fit the mold of what some people feel a Jewish stereotype is supposed to be. And also, like the film School Ties, the same thing can be said. If you've never seen a Jewish person in their life and you only hear stories of what you think they're supposed to be perceived as, how are you going to feel or how are you going to react when you actually are in the presence of somebody like that? And when I was growing up, I only surrounded myself with Jewish people because I was in a Jewish community, but I barely ever met people who were Christian or Muslim or Buddhist, and when I finally ventured out on my own and started to congregate with people from various different backgrounds, yes, it was a little intimidating because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how I would perceive them. I didn't know how they would perceive me. But the more we talk to each other and the more we get to know each other, and we are still proud of what we are, it's the other things that we find in common with ourselves and with each other that truly make us understand that we are not as different as we think we are. But yeah, Gentleman's Agreement is a very good movie. Is it a movie that I would see many, many times? Not necessarily, even though I truly did appreciate it. I thought the acting was fantastic. This is definitely one of Gregory Peck's best performances, and I also really appreciated Celeste Holm in this film, and the reason why is because I just recently watched her in All About Eve last year, and I loved her in that movie, but the performances in both of these films are so different, and I'm quite certain that she got an Oscar for this performance in Gentleman's Agreement. It's no surprise because in Gentleman's Agreement, she's so different from her performance in All About Eve, and it's just unbelievable. And I also really appreciate the friendship that she builds with Gregory Peck's character Skylar in this film. Such a great film. But it's not necessarily a movie that I would see over and over again as much as a movie like School Ties, because School Ties is just one that I saw when I was younger, appreciated it more, love it more, highly recommend it, and it's not a movie that I would get on DVD, but it is still very important. If I have the opportunity to see it again, I probably will, so I will be giving Gentleman's Agreement 3 stars out of 4. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. Please leave your comments in the box below, and let's discuss Gentleman's Agreement, and I will see you in the next one. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. If you're new here and want to see more of what my channel has to offer, please click on the link to my last video, or hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my uploads. Content of all sorts is posted here quite often, so trust me, you do not want to fall behind. I will see you in the comments, and actions speak louder than words.